Yeah, everybody, welcome back to Off the Bench. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson, and for those of you watching or for those of you listening, you might notice as well, our boy Pat has a brand new microphone. He got the same one as me, you little fucking copycat.
Dude, I was so fucking like this microphone is like not a piece of shit microphone. Like when I bought this for music recording, but it said it's a podcast microphone. But I was so fucking tired of sounding like shit, even with a nice microphone. So I said, fuck it. If I'm gonna sound like shit, I'm at least gonna have the same thing as you, so it's not my fault. So if I sound worse than you, it's your fault now.
Right. No, that's totally fair. Look, my mic, and I think our viewers and listeners can attest, my mic sounds great show in and show out, and yours sounds pretty great right now, so I think we should be good. Look.
And we look even better.
We're sexy as fuck. This is just the bearded sexy podcast. I don't know why I haven't renamed it yet. But look, your boy is coming off of quite an eventful weekend. I shipped up to your and my, home neck of the woods for the weekend in Connecticut. Got to meet Gary V on Friday, which was wild. A very good dude, guy I've looked up to in the content space for a long time. So made a connection there. Got to hit up UConn hockey, UConn basketball for the little comeback game after the Creighton massacre that happened earlier in the week. That was very upsetting.
Now, were you there for game day? Can only students get into game day?
So I was not there for game day. They opened it up to the public, I believe, after, they try to fill it with as many students as they can, and then I think they opened it up to the public. But no, I was not there. The game was at 8 p.m. and game day was at 10 a.m. And for those, well, I guess this depends where you live, but I mean, most people don't live, if you're just a fan, in the town that UConn is in, because the town that UConn's
nobody does.
Yeah, the town that UConn's in of Storrs, Connecticut is just UConn, basically. If you live nearby, it's like a very small handful of people that do. So most people live at least 30 minutes away. I live about an hour away, or my mom lives an hour away. That's where we were staying. So it would not have made a lot of sense to stay for 8 hours, and it also wouldn't have been a lot of fun to drive there and drive back. So no, I was not there for UConn hosting college game day. I was there for the game, though. Game was a lot of fun. They retired Rip Hamilton's number, so that was a good time. And then flew back on Sunday, and we are here now. And Pat, honestly, putting together the sheet for this show was I was struggling at first a little bit, because I was like, as much as that, yes, the franchise tag window is open and, the combine is starting, there just wasn't a whole lot to go off of. And then basically quotes and clips just kind of started flooding in throughout the day, because all these GMs and head coaches who are attending the combine, made themselves available to the media and said a good chunk of interesting things throughout the day. So we've got some material here.
Yeah, these guys are just straight up professional yappers at this point during the combine. We're going to talk about a lot of shit that coaches and executives have said in the last few days, and I guess maybe we'll play the game of how much of bullshit is this? Does this have any kind of value or no? But we'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. But yes, the combine is here, and that there's a lot of implications that come with the combine. Now, one of them being that these coaches and GMs are yapping up a storm in their media availabilities. Another one being the obvious one of, how are these players going to perform in these drills, and how is that going to help or hurt their draft stock? Who is even not participating? We'll talk about that as well. And then the big thing, honestly, Pat, and we'll talk about this too, is this is the time where teams are talking with each other. And this is the time that things like, last year's Bears-Panthers trade for the number 1 overall pick sort of started developing. Now, that trade didn't end up going through until a few weeks later on March 10th, but this is where those conversations are taking place. So, will we see Justin Fields getting traded here over the next few days? Will we see Russell Wilson's future be determined here over the next few days? Even if we don't, there's a good chance that the seeds for those things are being planted right now and over the next couple of days here at the NFL Combine. But Pat, before we get into all things football, how about those Fanatics baseball pants that are just showcasing cock and balls, huh? How are we feeling about that?
I was going to say, I was going to save my thoughts on that for the literal last few seconds of the podcast, but what the hell were they thinking? I love the memes where it's we need to get fandom. I've got it. Let's show them all the players' cocks and balls. It's
I don't know how they can mess up such a simple thing.
And the shirts look terrible too. Yeah. The long names look like umbrellas over it, and they're awful. Like there's nothing good.
Yeah.
And you've got, it's got to be bad to notice. Like I've never been one to notice. Like wow, like the makeup of these jerseys look terrible. You've got to be that bad. Obviously, you've got bad color schemes and whatnot, but that's not Fanatic's problem. But like just the literal make of them, you know how bad that has to be for people to notice, and it has been beyond bad.
Dude, it's fascinating that like such a simple thing that has been so fine for so long, and they can just come in and just fuck it up right away. Like the lettering, it looks like the knockoff jerseys you get at like Kohl's for these players with a letter, or like it looks like the youth jerseys where the lettering is just oddly small compared to everything else. And then yeah, obviously the transparency of the pants. You've got guys whose jerseys, I don't know if you saw the thing of the Indians, or excuse me, Guardians, where their cuffs were like different patterns or different color. Just a massive fuck up all around that is genuinely pretty fascinating that they managed to fuck that up too bad. But that is just the one baseball thing I wanted to touch on, because that is kind of the biggest thing going on with spring training in full swing.
The biggest thing.
Yes, a lot of there's hammers.
A lot of big things we're seeing.
A lot of big things. We're seeing lots of bat and balls, and that's before the game even tips off. So whatever. Pat, let's get into the football stuff. We'll start with our news for the week.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
Now, the number one thing that was a little bit surprising, Pat, is the salary cap ended up going fucking burr. So projections had the salary cap at about $245-ish million. Those expectations were shattered. Cap went up to $255.4 million, so about $10 million higher than expected. I did think it was funny that I saw a bunch of people, like Bucks fans and fans of teams with a lot of players that they need to re-sign, and they're like, oh, this means my team will be able to re-sign everybody. I'm like, that's not how economics works. That means that these players' contracts are just going to be higher. So and the bidding is going to stay the same. Whether you can afford guys is going to stay the same. It does not, this does not only apply to your favorite team, but this was definitely a surprise to see.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a week or two ago about how like teams will find a way to circumvent the cap. Well, we found it. They didn't even have to get creative. The league kind of just did it for them, but I mean, again, kudos to the NFL, same way the NBA has always been praised for doing. They're giving the players a fair share of the pie. They're raking in a lot of money with TV and ads and whatnot, and they're giving the players more of it, so good on them. But, like, it's true, it's not just going to be like, oh, we could sign all these more players. It's like, no, it just means, like, if we're talking, like, percentage of the cap filled with these contracts, it's just gonna go up. Maybe not a crazy amount, but also enough. Very funny that the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs, who have a very notable fan, who probably needed this cap space more than any team. Coincidence? Yeah, stop it. Like no, like
yeah. But the T Swift effect. She's brought the extra $10 million all by herself with the Swifties buying Travis Kelce jerseys. Truthfully, wouldn't surprise me. Pat, going along with the financial aspect of things, again, the franchise tag window has been open for a week, and there have been teams or situations that have both committed to not applying the franchise tag. So one thing we are seeing so far is there are minimal to no running back franchise tags being applied this cycle. So you've got this free agent market was set to include Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, and Austin Eckler at the sort of top tier of the friend of the show, Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler.
Yeah, those are the kind of the top of the running back market here, and it's star-studded. Make no bones about it. I mean, how much they each have left is more of a question, but this is definitely the craziest group of big name running backs to all be available at the same time. But it sounds like there was a report that none of these guys are going to be franchise tagged. Now, there was a piece of news that came out today specifically regarding Saquon Barkley, where Giants GM Joe Schoen said he doesn't want to tag Saquon, but it's not off the table. It became more of an option because of the cap increase. So that is one thing with the cap increase where people say, oh, you can re-sign more guys. It kind of does apply here because the franchise tag is a fixed amount based on last season. It's the top 5 of the highest paid players from last year. So a cap increase does not mean your franchise tag is going to cost you more, which is why Joe Schoen is seeing or feeling that this is a more potential situation that he actually does tag Saquon again. I still feel like it won't end up happening, and we'll see Saquon and all these other running backs end up hitting the market. But this is drastically different than last year, where you had Saquon, Pollard, and Jacobs all get tagged.
I was going to say there was all this talk, these running back meetings. Well, I bet you some of these guys are going to wish they were getting that salary that they would have had if they got franchise tag. Because while these guys are some of the finest running backs the league has to offer, a lot of them are kind of towards the end of their prime. You could even argue that a guy like our friend Austin Eckler might be really close to the end of his prime. So like these guys aren't going to command these multi-year, hefty salary kind of thing. I wouldn't be surprised to see at least a couple of these guys get annual averages a little bit below that number. I think the running back was like 14 million.
I think it was what I saw was like 12 point something for would have been Pollard, and I think that's what the number would have been for all.
Oh, you know why? I think it was like Jacobs, because it would have been his second one. I believe that number goes up if you get tagged a second time. Could be wrong there, but I could have sworn I saw like 14.
Well, it would be the second for Saquon and Pollard as well. You might be right. Either way, we're looking at 12 to 14. Sorry, we don't have the.
But the thing is, we might get, the thing is they might get 2 years, a little bit more security at more of an old age. Maybe that's what they want. But it's going to be really interesting, because not only are these guys kind of, we talked about last year how like, oh, these teams think they can just plug in any old running back. And like the answer to that is kind of like, yeah. So like with already a borderline oversaturated market, you've really got an oversaturated market, because now it's not just a bunch of Joe Schmoes. These are guys who have proven to be quality running backs. So I'm really interested to see, we kind of picked some places for these guys last week. Just interested to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm especially curious to see for the guys that arguably have a lot left in the tank. I mean, yeah, Eckler's one thing, and even Derrick Henry's another thing with the age.
But he's Derrick Henry.
Well, he is Derrick Henry, but I could see those contracts being a little lower than what a guy like Saquon Barkley's going to fetch. I'll be curious between like Henry and Jacobs who ends up getting more annual, because it's like Henry's the guy who's definitely reached higher highs, and Jacobs, didn't have a great year this past year, but he's 3 years younger than Derrick Henry.
And the thing with Jacobs,
that one's going to be interesting.
Jacobs, obviously he missed a handful of games to end the year, but he doesn't have like a significant injury history. Like he's a guy that's like feels like he's on the injury report every week, but he doesn't miss a whole lot of games. So the youth, the obviously lesser production, but it's fucking Derrick Henry we're talking about.
Everyone,
and like like you'd think that, and of course the Raiders said like, oh yeah, we're gonna try, and it's like, yeah, I'm sure you're gonna try, but how hard are you really gonna try?
Right.
It is my thing there. I mean, we'll see. What do we got? We've got a couple weeks now. Still a couple weeks.
March 13th when official free agency opens.
That's not soon enough. We're just going to be sitting here. We're just going to be sitting here talking about this for a few more weeks now until this happens. But at least glad to see these guys are at least going to have some kind of freedom to kind of get paid in proper. I think there's a decent chance that some of these guys return. It's not out of the question that guys like Saquon and Jacobs return. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a guy like Tony Pollard return to Dallas. But
Zeke.
Yeah. More guys like Eckler and Henry, though, it almost seems inevitable that they're gonna be gone. And they're the older side of the spectrum, so it'll be more so interesting for those two.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun free agent running back class to watch. The one thing I will warn about is that this came to mind because I saw Adam Schefter's tweet where it was like, this is going to be the most notable and accomplished running back class ever. Just keep in mind that like these guys are very much at different points in their careers, because when you're thinking about it from a fantasy football perspective and from how hyped you should be if one of these guys signs with your team, just remember that like the name Austin Eckler and the name Derrick Henry doesn't necessarily mean as much as it once did. Like they can definitely help your team, but I just don't want it to be like, oh God, we finally have all these great free agent running backs. I'm so excited to see where they go. Like they're all going to make such a difference. They're going to make varying levels of differences on their team. And quite honestly, I could see one or multiple of them not making a huge impact on their own from like a fantasy perspective of you wanting.
Yeah, these are guys that are going to make. This is definitely, with at least some of them, more of a case of you're going to be happy that these guys are on your team more so than fantasy. I think we're on the same page here that Saquon is going to have the biggest impact, whether it's in New York or whether it's somewhere else. I think he is definitely the cream of this crop here.
Absolutely, and he makes me cream my pants when I watch. Wait, what? Okay, so those guys are not getting franchise tag, but
Daddy, chill.
Tag you're it. Some guys are getting franchise tag. Now, we only have one official franchise tag as we sit down and do this podcast. That is T. Higgins, which we expected. But this crop of franchise tags is interesting. Last year, again, we had all the running backs get tagged. We had some other positions get tagged. But it was pretty clear at the time that those guys were going to sign the tag and stay with their team, most likely. This year, it seems like these guys, the ones that are getting tagged, are having a decent chance of being traded, or at least that's getting floated a little bit more than it was last year. T. Higgins being the poster child for this. So Bengals executive Duke Tobin did not shoot down a potential trade involving T. Higgins. He said the team is better with Higgins, but he can't predict all the potential scenarios. Now, we talked at the top of the pod, Pat, about how sometimes when these execs say things, they can be nothing burgers. They have to kind of, toe the line a little bit. But this is notable when you put it in the context of last year where he told other teams to get your own wide receiver. Like, that's what he came out and said when it came to T. Higgins. Now he's putting T out on the market a little bit. He's saying this is something we're willing to do. It is certainly not as hard of a stance that he is taking. So a tag and trade for T. Higgins, not off the table. And I don't think it should be, because I think T. Higgins could fetch a pretty nice return. And they've, not that it's a bad thing to have two great wide receivers like him and Jamar Chase, but when you've got Jamar Chase, I feel like that allows you to be a little more flexible in a situation like this.
Exactly. And like there's a great draft class of wide receivers. So we clearly see that the market is going to be there for T. Higgins as well. Like, there are going to be a lot of suitors. Carolina, possibly like Tampa if Mike Evans walks. Kansas City, Philly, Tennessee, a lot of teams. There could really be a lot of teams in the market for T. Higgins, and like, I feel like it even might be a case of like, hey, in this draft we can go get a younger, better T. Higgins. Like, think about like when the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs and wound up with Justin Jefferson over it. Like, so many instances where you kind of just like turn the page. Not to say T. Higgins is bad. Like, T. Higgins, sure. We've yet to see T. Higgins' true potential, obviously being a number 2 and having some injury issues, but I feel like it's kind of a win-win for Cincinnati, because either you can trade him and recoup a decent return and possibly get some through the draft, or you keep T. Higgins and you've got probably the best wide receiver 2 in the whole league, if not one of.
Yeah, definitely. Some of these other guys getting tagged, similar situations and different situations. Justin Madubuike, Baltimore Ravens, he is going to be tagged if an extension is not done by the deadline. That coming from their GM, Eric DaCosta. It does not sound like for Madubuike that a trade is on the table for him. They fully intend to keep him around. But a guy with a similar situation as T. Higgins, L'Jarius Sneed with the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs have said if they can't get an extension done with Sneed by the deadline, he will be tagged, and he could be tagged and traded, much like the T. Higgins situation. The Chiefs did this most recently with D. Ford in 2019. They tagged him and then traded him for a second-round pick. So this is you're starting to see this. We talked about the Chiefs having multiple guys and not necessarily being able to afford them all because of L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones both being free agents, and them potentially wanting to add a wide receiver. So even though the Chiefs aren't in cap hell like a lot of teams are, they still can't re-sign some of these guys who are, first-team All-Pros at their position. So Sneed could be moving on potentially.
Yeah, and you might think that they'd rather hang on to him than Chris Jones with the age and all, but it seems like they want Chris Jones back. Seems like he wants to be back. So I think very well that we could see that.
The Chiefs have been very good at kind of finding and developing these corners as well, so I can understand. Chris Jones feels a little bit more like a more irreplaceable player, so if that is the route they decide to go, I completely understand it. We've got some releases to touch on as well. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are releasing linebacker Shaq Barrett as a post-June 1st cut. Obviously instrumental in their Super Bowl run in 2020, and then the year before that, 2019, had 19 and a half sacks, but sadly, the kiss of death for really any position that requires, cutting and athleticism, tore his Achilles in 2022. Hasn't really been the same player since, and now you've got the Tampa Bay Bucks with Shaq Barrett are going to have dead money in 2024 at a total of $9.2 million. 2025, they will have $17.4 million in dead money, but it will save $4.9 million in total, so a slight cap savings there. And then the Jets releasing guard Laken Tomlinson. They'll take on about $11 million in dead money, but free up $8.1 million in cap space. So the Jets, further complicating things with their O-line in the name of saving money.
This was a bad one when it happened. I remember, Tomlinson was, I think he was a first-round pick to the Lions. Well, God, whatever year it was, probably way too long ago.
1984.
2015. So basically.
Same
And
thing.
like you got the point where the Niners were declining his option, and then the Jets are giving him a 3-year deal. Where now it's like he's still Laken Tomlinson. Like what it was George Fant a couple years before that. Like the Jets just like bringing in these just flat out bad offensive linemen, and paying them way too much money, and then just having to bite that later.
Sadly for the Jets, the days of Nick Mangold and DeBrickashaw Ferguson are long past because, man, what they wouldn't give to have those guys back.
God.
Pat, the most notable release thus far, early on in the offseason, our boy, Johnnu Smith, has been released by the Atlanta Falcons. Thank you for your service, Johnnu. This was not a surprise. Because Arthur Smith is no longer in the building. I mean, he's just Arthur Smith's little plaything at this point. You think he's going to the Steelers, Pat? What do we think's going on with John?
Come on, where else would he go?
Well, the Steelers, they have decent tight end depth because they have Pat Freiermuth and they have Darnell Washington, who's going to enter his second year, and I think they have reasonable tight end depth behind those two guys.
I forget
as well.
his name. God, he was playing all year.
Yeah, there was somebody that
Not Matt
somebody had
Spaeth.
tweeted him at.
Don't say Matt Spaeth.
Not Matt Spaeth.
Hayward. Connor Hayward.
Connor Hayward. Yes, thank you. So it's
He
like
didn't really do a whole lot, but you saw him on the field a lot when Freiermuth was out.
Of course, Johnnu's better than Hayward, but it's like at what point, you've got Freiermuth who's going to be your entrenched starter, tight end one. But who knows, Pat? Because, I mean, that's what Kyle Pitts was in Atlanta, so we'll see.
Well, here's the thing, too, is like you look at that tight end. We talked about last week how the tight end market is just a whole lot of mid. Johnnu Smith is actually like not the least intriguing option out of there. Like I can honestly see some teams bringing in Johnnu Smith with the intention of giving him a decent amount of run, as opposed to the Steelers, which would just kind of be funny at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a tight end class that off the top of my head I know as Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant. So,
Gerald Everett.
There's some names there, but it's not – you're right. Like, Johnnu Smith kind of fits seamlessly into that group.
I think he fits right into it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of what, sort of skill set you want. And look, as much as we make fun of the fucking trick plays Arthur Smith ran with Johnnu Smith, like, if you want the type of tight end that can run a jet sweep for you every once in a while, Johnnu's the only one out of that crew that can do it. I'd like to see Mike Gesicki try it maybe, but Johnnu's the only one out of those guys that has that sort of skill set, clearly in his bag. So who knows? Maybe Johnnu ends up with the Steelers. Maybe he ends up elsewhere. But all I know, Pat, is and I made this was probably my best call from last season was that Johnnu Smith would obtain some sort of fantasy relevance because there was no reason for it, but I was like, Arthur Smith's just such a fuckhead that it wouldn't surprise me. Johnnu Smith, we'll see this offseason now if he can
honestly,
regain it.
Like, you weren't even right enough somehow. Like, you were too right.
I know. That was one that I just kind of remembered. I had that take. I was like, man, I don't think Johnnu's going to fall by the wayside. And look, he seems to always find his way onto the fantasy radar. We'll see if he can do so again in a new location in 2024. Pat, mentioned it at the top of the show. It is Combine Week, but where the fuck is everyone? It seems like there's a lot less hype surrounding this year's NFL Combine, and a large reason for that is that a lot of the top players are not participating. They'll be in Indy to, interview and answer questions and, take some of the physical measurements, but they will not be testing. And those players include Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors. I'm sure plenty of other players, but for it to be so many guys who are projected top 10, even top 5 pick, like those players in some combination could be the top 5 picks and nobody would be surprised. None of them are going to work out. Williams, Daniels, and Neighbors will work out at their pro days. Harrison will not work out at all. Drake May, I did not see if he's going to work. I imagine he'll work out at his pro day because it's a very uncommon thing to not even do that. But we do know that Harrison will not be doing that. Marvin Harrison is fully preparing for his rookie season, feels he has proved enough. He's telling teams, go watch my tape. Like that's all I need to say. And honestly, Pat, I think that's fair, but it definitely has taken a little bit of steam out of the Combine. I'm not super excited to even try to tune in, to be honest.
I'm not particularly interested anyway, but I don't blame some of these guys because, like, I feel like when you're towards the top of the class here, it can really only hurt you at the combine. Like, I feel like a lot of the success stories out of the combine seem to be these lower ranked guys just launching up a lot of people's big boards.
Yeah.
At their pro days, it's a little more controlled. You can do what you want. Do what drills you want to do and things like that. But yeah, I don't necessarily blame these guys. And oh, this guy's too short, or this guy's hands are too small, or this guy didn't do well in this one drill this one time in an unfamiliar setting. Right. It's like
it is crazy to me. I feel like the combine has sort of overstayed its welcome a little bit. Not that it should be removed or anything, but that there should definitely be less stock put into the combine at this point, because all you end up doing is showcasing guys who have the raw skills but haven't been able to put it together on the field. And I know that that's kind of what teams are looking for when they're looking for like the hidden gem sort of players, but more often than not, if they haven't been able to put it together on the field, the combine isn't going to reveal anything. Puka Nacua tested terrible at the combine. Like, that did not reveal, the combine did not reveal the obvious, or not obvious, but the ultimate hidden gem of that class.
I feel like, 1 second. Excuse me, loud throat clear. I feel like you make a good point. Like, I feel like the NFL, out of the three major sports that I watch, at least MLB and NBA, like, in college, you've either got it or you don't. Like, in basketball, you hear a lot of this thing like, oh, this guy didn't do well in college, but he's got all the raw tools to be a great NBA player. And that, a lot of the time, that's true. But, in the NFL, football is just such a... I feel like you either have it or you don't.
In a lot of ways, I think that's true. And it's hard because, football is obviously the ultimate team sport, and you can, potentially fall by the wayside, and like a guy like Puka Nacua did. And I don't think it's so much that you've got it or you don't. If you weren't productive in college, you won't be in the NFL. It's more so that the combine is not going to teach you anything new.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta learn through talking to these players, finding out who's got the right mindset, who's, why a guy underperformed in college, and you're not going to get any of those answers through the testing at the combine. The 40 times are simply a way for John Ross to get drafted way too fucking high. Darius
Hayward Bay looking asses, but
right.
I do think, at least more so for skill position players, because I think a lot of times, we'll see, like for example, Dawson Knox did not catch a single touchdown at Ole Miss sitting behind DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. He's been a productive guy. But I feel like when we're talking more quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, maybe even secondary, it's like those are the guys that you really see on display there. Like, I feel like a tight end in the trenches, things like that, you can kind of ease your way into something more.
Yeah, like I see the benefits from a perspective of representatives from these teams can finally talk to these players for the first time and, get to know them and all that. But the testing, man, I don't know, like, especially the 40 time. 40 times could not possibly matter any fucking less at this point. It is game speed and your 40 time are such different. We are not running Olympic trials in the NFL. We're not. So I don't know why players are asked to train for this specific test that does not translate to the NFL at all, just so we can find out what your straight line speed is when you're wearing shorts and a tank top. It's very odd to me. So I don't. The only
good thing I think about it is we get to see Rich Eisen do it in a full suit every year, and it's for a good cause. More so.
That is true. We should do the combine, Pat. Me and you, and that would really get our following up, I think.
Shit, I'll run a shirtless 40.
I'm in. I'm so in. Okay, so another element of the Combine Week that I mentioned earlier, this is where the seeds were planted for that Bears-Panthers trade last year. Could we see the same for a Justin Fields trade? It sounds like that is a distinct possibility here in the coming days. The more and more things that come out, the more it sounds like even further cemented that the Bears are going to keep the number one pick, draft Caleb Williams, and get rid of Justin Fields. And how do we know that? Well, Pat, it comes down to this. We'll move into this segment of we're going to rifle through a bunch of comments that were made by GMs and coaches throughout just today, Tuesday, February 27th, as the Combine got going, because there's a lot of stuff. One of them being from Bears GM Ryan Poles, who said he wants to do right by Justin Fields. Now, if that doesn't tell you he's out the door, I don't know what does. That is just, we're moving on from you, and we want to make sure you're taken care of on the way, which is nice to hear, in fairness.
Yeah, I mean, they put a lot into him, and now try to get as much out you can out of him while respecting him in the process, which he seems to think they're not doing, but
Yeah. So we are officially, if we weren't already, we are officially on Justin Fields trade watch, like to the point where I will not be surprised if, that alert hits my phone at any point from now until, the next week or two. I'll be a little surprised if it doesn't hit it before that week or two, but it is now at the point where this could happen at any moment. So be on the lookout. Poles also said he has no concerns about Caleb Williams potentially not wanting to play in Chicago. So, this
Clearly
is,
not.
Yeah, clearly. This is one of those things that it could be nothing, and it doesn't necessarily mean he's gotten like assurance from Caleb's camp that, yes, he's excited to play in Chicago or anything like that. But it's got to be a little encouraging for Bears fans that, Poles is not showing any sort of apprehension to this possibility, because this is a situation we've seen, in the past with Eli Manning refusing to play where he's drafted. John Elway as well. So, it's not unprecedented. And with honestly, with how poorly the Bears have developed quarterbacks, I understand. But at the same time, maybe the Bears have just had quarterbacks that they weren't it. Like, you can say they're bad at developing quarterbacks, but who's to say Mitch Trubisky turns into anything better if he's drafted somewhere else? Who's to say Justin Fields is playing significantly better if he goes somewhere else? I mean, I guess we'll get somewhat of an answer to that soon if a team can capitalize on him, but still, who knows?
And honestly, like, Caleb Williams is probably good enough that if they can't develop him, it may not matter. Like, the guy just might be good enough to be able to persist through whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a higher level prospect than any of the quarterbacks the Bears have drafted in the last couple of years, particularly Mitch Trubisky. Looking back at that one man, that is just not a good look. Okay, 49ers GM John Lynch talked about Brandon Ayuk, Pat. This is a guy that when we talked about the Niners, after the Super Bowl, we talked about how they would have some tough decisions to make coming up soon because they have so many all-pros on their team, so many guys who either are being paid a lot or are about to be paid a lot, and that's without even talking about Brock Purdy's contract that'll come up after this season. So, Brandon Ayuk became a big question. What would they do with him? What would they do with Deebo Samuel? Could that be where they go to save some money? But John Lynch, talking about Ayuk, said, we've got a nice track record of extending players that are important to us, and Brandon's a guy that we want to keep around for a long time. So, look, to me, that's kind of as clear as it gets as far as what their intent is. Now, does that mean they ultimately come to an agreement? No, but it does tell me that they're prioritizing him, which for a smart organization like the 49ers that's so good at identifying talent, I'm glad that that's how they feel about it. It sounds like if they were to want to free up cap space by getting rid of a receiver, it would be Deebo Samuel, who is, a more versatile player, but an older player. And I think they know that. He's a guy who misses several games with injuries every year, pretty debilitating injuries at that. So it doesn't surprise me that they want to go this direction. It's probably nice, though, for Niners fans to hear official confirmation that, they're not going to get rid of their kind of budding star receiver. It's like Brandon Ayuk, I feel like, is a same tier of receiver as a T. Higgins, but it's such a different situation.
I like him better.
I do too. You don't have a Jamar Chase next to Brandon Ayuk that makes Brandon Ayuk expendable. You have Deebo Samuel, who's older, and when you have to make the choice between those two guys, yeah, you should go with the younger guy. And it seems like that's what the Niners are doing, and I think that's a good choice. Pat, this one had to get you a little excited in your pants. I assume GM Tom Telesco of the Las Vegas Raiders emphasized that wide receiver Davante Adams is not going anywhere, despite some trade rumors. He said, quote, he's a Raider. How do you feel about this one?
Those trade rumors have been going on since he got there. I believe this. I believe this, that it would take a king's ransom to get him away from there. The Jets or whoever, I would just be really, really surprised to see it happen because they don't have a whole lot behind him. Like, he is the focal point, especially with Josh Jacobs currently not on the team. He is the focal point of that offense. And unless they really want to rebuild here in the Antonio Pierce era, which I hope to God they don't want to do, but I would be really, really surprised if he was gone.
I will say I'm a little surprised at what a strong stance they're taking on the situation, just because, yes, the Raiders don't have – obviously, they don't have any other weapons the level of Davante Adams. But if they traded Davante Adams, they would certainly have a deficiency in terms of skill players. I mean, you're looking at Jacoby Myers as wide receiver one, Michael Mayer, who I think will take a step forward. He's your tight end. Trey Tucker. I mean, look, he flashed last year. But, yeah, it would definitely be they would feel that hit. I'm a little surprised, though, just the fact that, they don't have a quarterback that can lead this team. They are missing some other pieces that would make them a truly competitive team. I'm surprised they're holding on so tight to a 31-year-old wide receiver when in theory, I feel like you might be able to get the Jets to overpay quite a bit just because of the reuniting with Aaron Rodgers aspect.
I think it also depends on who they can bring in at quarterback. Like if they go through, if they go and draft a quarterback, you think like, oh, like yeah, like maybe it is kind of a rebuild. But if they could bring in a guy like Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins or someone else who can kind of help them be competitive close sooner, right now possibly. But I guess we'll have to see come April. But honestly, I feel like if they're going to trade him, it's going to be before the draft because it's going to include a large amount of draft capital. So,
yeah, I don't think it's a bad choice to hold on to him. I think even if you do draft a quarterback, like it's obviously going to help to have a guy like Davante Adams around. I'm just a little surprised at how strongly the statement was made. It wasn't a we'll see. It wasn't if the right offer comes around, then maybe, but we'd prefer to have him kind of deal. It was, no, we're keeping him. He's a Raider. So I'm sure Davante Adams is happier about this than he was 6 months ago when Josh McDaniels was still around. It seems like the vibe of the Raiders is definitely a lot better. So maybe he's having fun there, and maybe he just doesn't really want to leave. Who knows? So many people just pegged him to go to the Jets that it was felt almost like a foregone conclusion at one point, but seems like he's going to be in Vegas at least for right now. Pat, we've got Titans GM Ran Carthon on Tyjae Spears. Now, this is going to be one of the darlings of the fantasy football world here a few months once people start thinking about that again. He said about Tyjae Spears, for lack of a better way of putting it, he's made of the right shit. So that's pretty great to hear a GM come out and say that, and definitely is going to light a fire in the undies of any Tyjae Spears dynasty owners or potential redraft drafters.
And that's not even his only electric quote in this segment here either. Like, this guy is just spewing off bangers. But yeah, Tyjae Spears, I mean, we saw it last year. 3 down potential. We clearly know we can handle the third down. A good pass catcher, and he certainly showed flashes at the end of the year to the point where they would like to move on from Derrick Henry, who granted is old, but is still producing at a reasonable level. But they have Spears is probably a bit more dynamic at this point. Henry, you kind of know what you're going to get, just a power runner, one of the best power runners to ever do it. But, Spears kind of gives you just a little bit more. I still think they're probably going to bring in a bruiser to go with him, but one who will get the Tyjae Spears, allotment of carries from this past year with Spears moving into Henry's.
Pat, right now, if things are as they are right now, heading into draft day, where are we taking Tyjae Spears? Is he a dead zone back, or is he like an early third back? Because those are different things slightly. Like, our dead zone kind of starts late third, I feel like. But is he a guy that's got his own merit?
Well, one, it depends on who they bring in. If they bring in,
I'm
like,
saying,
my boy...
Assuming they bring in a depth guy who's obviously a depth guy. Say they bring in literally Chase Edmonds, who we'll mention him in a few minutes. But like they bring in that guy where Tyjae Spears is clearly going to, have the crack, have the job to himself, unless he massively fucks it up. Where do you think he goes in fantasy football drafts?
I would say, if anything, if he is going to go in the dead zone, I think he would be at the very top of it.
I ask just because the dead zone is typically running backs who are not rookies. There's
at least one red flag in there.
But there's a red flag. It's usually the guys that have been in the league and are like just now getting their first crack at a job so you don't know what they're going to do, or it's guys falling off the other way. Yeah.
Injuries, aging, competition, and honestly, doesn't seem like Tyjae Spears is going to have any of that. I mean, granted, the only thing he's going to have is it's going to be his first crack at it. That's the only thing on his. So, if anything, I think he would go very, very close to the dead zone. I don't think this is going to be one of these knockout guys that people are going to confidently take. I feel like he might be more of it wouldn't even be a 0 RB thing because it would still be in the third round. So, I mean, it'll also be interesting to see others around him. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces here, depending on which guys go where. So. But I'll say he's not in the dead zone, but he's damn close.
Yeah, it just gives me flashbacks strictly because of the situation to Alexander Madison, where it's different because I think Tyjae Spears is a better player.
I agree.
I got to look into it and see kind of how he compares to Madison in some other ways. But it's you have Madison, who was in the league for the longest time, flashed in stretches, and then got the job. Is the fact that he's getting the job and is clearly the guy getting the job going to elevate him above the dead zone, or is it going to keep him kind of, people are going to be hesitant and just kind of keep him in there? I think that'll be a fun one to watch because the Tyjae Spears hype train has the potential to be the hype train.
I was going to say, I bet you he's one of, if not the trendiest player.
You know what I feel like it is? I feel like it's going to be similar to the Rashad White situation, where Rashad White was in the dead zone. He was just the hit of the dead zone.
I like Tyjae Spears better.
Really? Okay.
Like going into this year,
Tyjae Spears will be on Pat's team. Got it.
I'm going to say I like Tyjae Spears better than I liked Rashad White last year. And obviously everybody should have liked Rashad White more. But at least right now, I think that he's got a little more upside than Rashad White.
I would agree. All right, Titans drafting Blake Corum confirmed. Moving on.
Exactly. They could just pour water on our fire right away.
100%. Pat, you mentioned the other comment from Rand Carthot. I'll just touch on it here really quick. It's just very funny, and it's not relating to any particular player, but he was asked if there are other positions besides the Titans' primary needs, offensive line and wide receiver, that they're focused on, to which he replied, not really. So I love that. There's no gray area.
The opposite of coach speak. Yeah.
This man is straight to the point. So this guy's like, we are drafting a lineman or a receiver. There's no bones about it.
And where are they drafting? 7, I believe? Yeah, 7. There's going to be plenty of good options at either position. So
yeah. Depending on how things shake out, I mean, you could have anything from Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze.
Yeah, they might get that
to
top
Joe
lineman.
Alt. I mean, you never know. It's very possible.
I feel like it's either the Chargers or them. I feel like either the Chargers are going to take him or he's going to be there.
Yeah, I agree. And then, okay, Tyjae Spears could be one of the darlings of fantasy football season. Another one, Pat, that we've been trying to make happen, but this guy has just kind of tried to his hardest to not make himself happen. Jameson Williams. So Dan Campbell on Jameson Williams said, by the end of the year, we really felt like he was coming into his own, and said Williams will push to be a full-time starter now. There's an element of this comment where it's like, duh, he's going to push to be a full-time starter. I think what's more interesting to me is the idea of him actually becoming one, because if you get, 98% of snaps version of Jameson Williams, what does that look like? Because for me personally, I had kind of resigned myself to being out on Jameson Williams. Yes, I know the Lions offense, they kept around Ben Johnson, but just the fact that they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, I was like, even if Jameson Williams puts everything together, I didn't see him being more than a Gabe Davis, maybe advanced version of Gabe Davis sort of producer. But if he's actually going to be on the field all the time, and we're going to see, because, Josh Reynolds is a free agent. I wonder if this speaks to Josh Reynolds possibly not coming back. But,
so is Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like it's literally, saying from like a literal depth chart perspective, it's literally St. Brown and Khalif Raymond.
Yeah. It's
outside of Williams?
Jameson Williams, based on what he's done so far in the NFL, did not strike me as a guy that a team would want to commit to giving a full-time starter role. It was almost like he would maybe earn that over time. But look, if we head into next year and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown standing across from Jameson Williams on that field, that's going to change a lot of things for fantasy football. Like, this is going to be a guy that people are going to have, in their flex on week 1, potentially, if he has that role.
And I'm sure they're going to give him that opportunity, but it's, again, what's he going to do with that? Because we've seen a lot of just boneheaded things, even off the field, gambling on team facilities. So, but like I just said, though, he might be, he's going to at least enter right now as the clear number 2 on the depth chart. He's such a weapon, but the only problem is their 2 best players on offense, St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, are such weapons in their own.
Yeah,
I think to more agree that I think if anything, Williams is going to be more of a deep threat. More of could be like a gadget guy, but in that Lions offense, that might be enough to make you fantasy relevant. It's just like, is he going to capitalize on this opportunity?
Yeah, he's a guy if he becomes a starter, he has maybe the widest range of outcomes of any play. Like, this is a guy that, his talent and his skill set coming out of college suggested that this could be a top 10 fantasy and top 10 NFL wide receiver at some point. And he has just not even come close to putting that together. So I think it's kind of been put off in our minds a little bit. But if this guy ends up being a full-time starter in a Ben Johnson offense, there is a world where he becomes, undeniable in the sense that, yes, the Lions have a lot of weapons, but he can assert himself to the top of those weapons. It's not impossible. I'm not banking on it, but I'm going to be very interested to see where his draft stock ends up being, especially if this comment ends up coming to fruition. Bucks head coach Todd Bowles, speaking of Rashad White a couple minutes ago, Pat, he said he'd like to add another back to take the load off Rashad White. Said he liked what he saw from Chase Edmonds last year. So the first half of that comment made a lot of sense. It's something we've discussed.
We've been talking about that, yeah.
The second part of that comment feels to me like coach speak, where it's just, we saw this other guy and he looked okay and he's still on our roster. Is he still on the roster?
He's got to be a free agent, right?
I would think, but then I'm like, why is he even fucking talking about him?
Throw him at the top of that list of top free agents, according to Todd Bowles.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds is.
Yes, he is a free
agent. Or undrafted. He's an unrestricted free agent. So, yeah, look, if it's Chase Edmonds that comes back, then Rashad White to the moon again.
but I do think they will bring Chase Edmonds back, but I do think they're going to bring somebody else in with him. Todd Bowles has got to say that, but, stop it. Stop it. We haven't seen, even Chase Edmonds, even back when he had some opportunities in Arizona, this guy has never really taken advantage of it. He looked really good in Miami for a couple weeks until Mike McDaniel just LOL, Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you remember that. You remember that better than anybody. But
I drafted Chase Edmonds as my RB2 that year, and lucky for me.
Yeah, didn't you draft Mostert right after, though, right?
I did. Luckily, I had Raheem Mostert. And honestly, Pat, having Raheem Mostert is why I ended up drafting Raheem Mostert this year and why he carried me to be 4-0. So, but yes, the Chase Edmonds sort of draft project did not go well for me, and he's very mid. But yeah, it's look, it's not surprising to hear this from Bowles, but at the same time, it is. I'm not going to say nice to hear, because if you're a Rashad White believer, you don't want to hear this. It is something that was probably inevitable, that Rashad White was just, he's not going to be this workhorse back. And it's more so, what level of player are they now going to bring in, and how much of Rashad White's workload are they going to eat into?
In Rashad White to the moon if it's Chase Edmonds, but we're going to have a new offensive coordinator there. Mm-hmm. And we talked about kind of his efficiency issues, kind of these red flags in terms of just his talent. I wouldn't take him in the first round, even if it's just him and Chase Edmonds.
Oh, God, no.
He was RB5, so you think he would be in that range.
You're right.
I would not even consider taking him as my RB1, assuming he would be going in the top 2 rounds. No way.
Yeah, I hate to be kind of a hater this early on in the process, but I feel like Rashad White, we get to our portion of the pods where we're talking about potential busts for the year. I think he's going to be one of my guys, especially if his ADP is anywhere inside the top, honestly, the top 30, I'm going to say there's a good chance that he ends up being a bust if they bring in any running back of note in this backfield. If they don't, I would say anywhere, I would say he should be ranked maybe inside the top. He should be ranked inside the top 30 if they don't bring in anyone else notable, but I'm not going to be a big fan of him next year.
He's one of those guys that you want your opponent, someone else to take.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take him high, but I hope someone else does, which ironically this year was Travis Etienne and James Conner. So,
right.
What the fuck do we know?
Yeah, what the fuck do we know? But no, Rashad White, look, talented player. I don't want to take anything away from him. He is a good NFL player. He belongs in this league. He deserves to get a lot of touches throughout a game. I warn anybody that thinks they're going to get another top 5 running back season from Rashad White, and honestly even a top 10 running back season. I think you're looking at more of a kind of boom bust RB2 with the new situation he is likely to have next season, and I don't see him being a player that I invest in those rounds. But who knows? Speaking of the same situation, Pat, GM Jason Licht spoke about my boy, Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker. He said Sean Tucker needs to take a big step. He has the talent, speed, and size. So, look, it wasn't super complimentary. I just thought it was funny that, honestly, he even mentioned fucking Sean Tucker.
But did he bring up Keyshawn Vaughn after that, too? Or
I mean, man, look, I want it to be Sean Tucker season so bad. I just don't think I'm going to get it. Okay. Players that are actually a little more relevant than Sean Tucker, but not by much. John Harbaugh said the ball is going to get to Rashad Bateman a lot more next year. Man, talk about comments I don't give a fuck about.
Talk
this
about just deja vu. I feel like it's
how
always.
Long have we been hearing this?
I drafted Rashad Bateman this year, granted very late,
I
But
drafted
still,
him
like,
2 years ago.
from the possibility, like, and he was going in around like the 10th round 2 years ago, I believe as well. Like he was going in a position where like it was not a flyer. Like it was more than a flyer. I took him as a flyer, but like Zay Flowers is clearly the top dog. Well, Mark Andrews is the top dog. Zay Flowers is the top dog in the wide receiver room, assuming Odell will be who knows where, and Nelson Aguilar will be who knows where. Even like as the wide receiver too, if he is that, I believe they'll bring someone else in. I still don't love it. I feel like they're still going to run the ball a fuck ton, and then they're going to throw to Mark Andrews, and they've got a great young receiver in Zay Flowers. I don't give a shit about Rashad Bateman right now.
I will not be fooled again by Rashad Bateman. It's February. We're not doing this already. Okay, Sean Payton says a decision on Russell Wilson's future will come in the next 2 weeks. So this is one of the more deadline-oriented, I guess, interesting pieces of news. Not that I give a fuck about, the fantasy impact of where Russell. I guess I do, because what if he goes somewhere where he tanks the value of the skill players? So it's interesting.
You think that's a negative, like Russell Wilson going somewhere? Because I think Russell Wilson would be one of the more competent. We're both in a position where our teams need quarterbacks. Your team is more likely to do it in the draft than mine. If Russell Wilson went to the Raiders, granted, it would be very cheap, obviously. I wouldn't hate it. Hate it.
I just think the upside is so low for not only Russell Wilson, but for the team he goes to and for the skill players he's going to try to support. Like, I'll say this. Look, Cortland Sutton had a great year. So that's one thing, but Russ was not able to support more than one fantasy relevant player on that team. And I just think things are only going to get worse. He's only getting older. And I think the Broncos, Pat, truly got the most they could possibly get out of Russell Wilson. Like, I don't see Russell Wilson statistically getting better anywhere that he goes. If anything, there's only nowhere to go better, but no, I'm not excited for wherever he ends up.
I forgot that they extended him too. Like, it was all their fault.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't they traded for this horrible contract. No. Not only did they trade away so much, which, granted, isn't looking awful. Like, it was Noah Fant, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and some picks. It's like,
I don't know what the picks turned into off the top of my head. But
at least those three players, nothing super significant, but obviously the hit that it is going to cause them in the future, that is going to be a long-lasting impact on this team now, who is, another team that needs a quarterback.
Yeah, let me, I want to look up what that pick turned into, because I think it was something really good. So, yes, those players, you're right, though, didn't turn into anything super notable. But, Devon Witherspoon, is he any good? That was the pick the Seahawks got from the Broncos last year. So, that one worked out. Honestly, that one pick alone worked out. But that happened because the Broncos were so much worse than anyone expected. So, yeah, just a massive fail for Denver in every sense of the word. But, yes, Russell Wilson's future supposedly going to be decided in the next 2 weeks. I am just excited to start to see these QB dominoes fall. We mentioned how Justin Fields was probably the first one to fall, or first one to eventually fall, and then we'll probably get Russell Wilson. And then when free agency hits, we'll find out about Kirk and Baker and all these guys. But for now, this is kind of the movement that we are anticipating on the way. Okay, our next segment here, guys, you may remember from last week we did a draft, and we went back and forth kind of assigning the ideal fantasy football fits for some of the most notable free agents in this upcoming free agency class, again, starting on March 13th. So I figured, look, the Combine's this week. Prospects are on people's minds, as much as they're going to be up until the NFL draft. Let's do the same sort of thing for the top skill players in this year's NFL draft. So we're going to do ideal fantasy football fits for the top skill players in the upcoming NFL draft. Your Marvin Harrisons, your Malik Neighbors, all these guys. And, you guys let us know if you agree, disagree. We're going to try and put these guys in situations where they are going to get you some fantasy points if they end up here. So, Pat, I believe I had the first pick last week.
I think you did.
Yeah, so you are up.
I do not think I am taking any stretches here. I think more likely than not, this guy's going to be there. And the fact that he is going to be there at the number 4 pick is insane. I think Marvin Harrison is going to be an Arizona Cardinal.
I agree.
that is, we saw a great, surge from Trey McBride. He is going to be a clearly solid tight end. But outside of that, like, we saw phases where Zach Ertz was getting a ton of targets, where Marquise Brown were getting a ton of targets. There are plenty of targets to go around for wide receivers. Like, I wanted Michael Wilson to happen. People have been trying to make Greg Dortch happen and Rondale Moore happen.
The human Dortch.
Like it is wide open for the taking there. Obviously, like, they're probably not going to be very good, but Kyler Murray, this will be his first full season coming off injury, is still a very competent quarterback. So you give him a guy like Marvin Harrison. We're talking this season, but dynasty startup, I think he is the clear number one pick if you're in a dynasty this year. I don't think that's even bold.
No, I think that's fair. And again, look, just like last week, I think it's important to note we are balancing both ideal fantasy fits and realistic ideal fantasy fits because complete ideal fantasy fit is the Chiefs trade up to number 4 and draft Marvin Harrison. We are under the assumption
I'm trying to predict as well.
Yeah. Trying to predict. I think it's okay to even have a hypothetical trade, or if it's realistic to you. But again, we're not gonna go so crazy off the path here of what the draft order currently is. We're kind of trying to be like, okay, what's the best fit where this guy is likely to be drafted? So yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Cardinals. I think that Kyler Murray is a guy who, much like Lamar Jackson, although not to that extent, I think is going to remind people who he is this upcoming year. Which, I think is going to be a big bounce back for him.
Isn't terrific. I think at Kyler's peak, he's probably QB 8 maybe.
Yeah, but he's so far off that radar.
That's still very good.
That would be a major reestablishment of who he is, because that would put him right, next to Trevor Lawrence in the QB rankings.
Ew.
I know. I'm hoping he takes a little step forward as well, but it puts Kyler back in that tier of Trevor and Justin Herbert and that kind of level of quarterback. So yes, I think Kyler Murray is going to have a bit of a resurgence here. Not to the level of Lamar. I'm not saying Kyler's winning the fucking MVP, but people are just kind of writing Lamar off a little bit, and he very much told people not to fucking do that this year. So respect. And okay, with my first pick, there's a few different directions I can go here. I feel like it will serve me better, or the more fun picks to talk about are kind of the receivers as opposed to the quarterbacks, because having a fantasy relevant quarterback in year one, it can happen, but it's hard. It's hard. No matter where any of these quarterbacks go, nobody's going to be drafting them as a QB1. I think it'll be throwing them on your bench and seeing what they end up doing. So I'm going to go with a skill player here. And Pat, fuck it, I'm going to go with the fun one that I wanted to do. We're putting Brock Bowers on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Damn it.
This is, again, Gerald Everett's a free agent, so they have an opening at tight end. Not that they wouldn't make room for fucking Brock Bowers even if they had Gerald Everett. But this is an interesting situation from the perspective that the Chargers are going to run the ball. We don't know who their running back is going to be, but with Jim Harbaugh at the helm and Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator, this is a team tailored to run the ball. So is it smart for me to pick a guy who is going to be reliant on the pass game and say this is his ideal fantasy fit? I don't know, but I think even for a team that is going to run the ball a lot, they're obviously going to have to pass it plenty as well. And when they do so, I think there's an opportunity here for Brock Bowers to become a major go-to guy and major red zone threat if the Chargers, let's say, move on from Mike Williams. I think Keenan Allen's probably going to stick around. Keenan Allen, assuming relative health, will be their target leader for the billionth year in a row. But Brock Bowers is a guy that can absolutely capitalize on what should be just hopefully a more efficient offense overall. I know we said the same thing last year when Kellen Moore took over as offensive coordinator, but I'm hoping eventually, the blind squirrel finds the fucking nut and the Chargers can actually make some progress here with that offense. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt right now because I love the Harbaugh hire, and I think they're just going to be in more scoring opportunities, attaching Brock Bowers to what I still believe is a quarterback with a lot of potential and maybe the most pure arm talent in the league in Justin Herbert. I think this is a recipe for a top 5 tight end season for fantasy football.
Yeah, I wanted to give him to the Jets. So you beat me from that. But yeah, I think it's just, again, I think the Jets would have been in a similar spot. It's the Chargers desperately need offensive line help. It's Brock Bowers would be awesome.
Yeah.
But are they going to prioritize a guy like Joe Alt who is, would possibly be the top pick, like in a year with, a worse skill position player.
Quarterbacks wide
he could he's going to be the top non-skill position player drafted, presumably. So are they going to prioritize that, or are they going to take the shiny piece? And we've seen teams like Jamar Chase over Penny Sewell for the Bengals. I remember hating that, thinking what are they doing? If the guy is going to be that good, who cares?
Yeah,
they'll figure it out. But if Brock Bowers is as good as he's advertised, which I presume he will be, then it might sting a little less for the Chargers if Joe Alt does turn out to be also as good as he is advertised.
And just a quick reminder for this segment as well, just like last week, once we choose a player, they cannot be selected by the other person. That's why Pat said he would have given Brock Bowers to the Jets. I have assigned Bowers somewhere, so Pat's not going to assign him somewhere else. So continue.
Brock Bowers. We've talked a lot about this team, even today, about their desperate need for a wide receiver, to the point where that's going to be one of the only positions that they're going to draft from. And again, I think this will be the guy that will be available at 7. So I'm going to give Rome Odunze to the Tennessee Titans.
Very interesting. Okay.
I don't think he's the second best wide receiver, but I think the second best wide receiver will be gone at that point.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think there's obviously that opening with the Titans. So,
and again, talk about DeAndre Hopkins, he's old, and he had a solid year, but you give Will Levis that number one target for them to develop together in Brian Callahan's offense. I think that's, again, will the Titans prioritize offensive line in that position as well? I don't know, but I think they really need A.J. Brown. Hey, it could be anything. It could even be A.J. Brown. You know how much you've always wanted one of those.
Right.
So I'll go with that, just because where I think the guy ahead of him is going, Malik Neighbors, is to a cesspool. But I'll pick him there next if it so happens that way.
That is fair. There were comments from Brian Callahan today where he was basically not comparing Will Levis to Joe Burrow, but saying that was still the kind of offense he was going to run. Some of the similar things he did with Burrow and the Bengals. And if you are going to even try to do that, you need some better receiver talent than what they have behind DeAndre Hopkins at the moment. So getting DeAndre Hopkins and Rome Odunze together would certainly be a combination. Okay. I have a few here. I had Malik Neighbors to the Titans, actually. So I am going to pivot here and just not even maybe bother with Neighbors for now and leave that to you. I'm going to pick the landing spot for Jaden Daniels. And this landing spot is likely going to require a trade up, but I think it's a realistic team that could trade up. I'm going to put Jaden Daniels on the Denver Broncos. Looking at all of the teams, all of the teams Jaden Daniels could end up on. You've got the Patriots, who, look, we're doing this before free agency, so the Patriots can go out and get, who knows, Mike Evans, something like that. But right now, they are not flush with any kind of weapons to help Jaden Daniels if we're looking at Jaden himself from a fantasy perspective and where we want him to succeed. Patriots really got nothing going on. You look at your Las Vegas Raiders, Pat, who just brought in the offensive coordinator from a team that could not figure out how the fuck to handle a quarterback that runs. So I'm not putting him in Las Vegas as much as I almost wanted to do that. And then the other team I considered was the Atlanta Falcons. The reason I didn't choose the Atlanta Falcons, despite how flush they are with weapons, is they're a little too flush with weapons to get the most out of a running quarterback in fantasy, in my opinion. So you take a team like the Denver Broncos, who has solid weapons with Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. Who knows what Jerry Jeudy's future is, because I feel like there's been weird rumors with him constantly. But we'll talk about Sutton, Javonte, Greg Dulcich I'm a fan of. There's decent weapons there, and it's probably the best O-line among the teams that need a quarterback. So I think Jaden Daniels, for his sake, Denver is a pretty good landing spot, and that is why I've settled on them.
Now, where do you think the trade-up is, to 2 or to 3?
That's a good question. I think it kills me, but I think 3. I don't want the Patriots to trade out. If this situation were to come to pass, though, I could see the Broncos being a team kind of desperate enough to make that move and make me sad on draft day because I want Jaden Daniels. It's not his best fantasy fit, but I want Jaden Daniels.
My thing more so is I think looking at mocks in preparation for this, a lot of people have him going to Washington at 2 over Drake May anyway. That's the thing. So like our team's going to think like, oh, we need to get to 2 if we want Jaden Daniels. So that is interesting. I mean, yes, I certainly like it better than Las Vegas. Minnesota's another team. Obviously, who knows what they'll do with Kirk Cousins? Like Minnesota would be another fun team. Could certainly succeed immediately, but all right.
I can even see Arizona, by the way. Like, I don't think Jaden Daniels necessarily falls to 4, but I think this early in the process, it's a possibility. Like, we still don't know exactly where these guys are going to lie. But, yeah, I guess I'd pick the Patriots. All right, go ahead.
I tease Malik Neighbors, but I think in terms of actual fantasy production, I think I'd like to do this. I think, last time I had Mike Evans departing Tampa Bay. So let's have Tampa Bay replacing him with Brian Thomas Jr.
Wow.
Also
okay.
Out of LSU. It's, playing with Daniels behind Malik Neighbors. If they do lose him, they're right in that range. They're, 24? I'm just guessing. 26. Yeah. 26. So in that range for sure. Again, we saw Mike Evans eat, and Chris Godwin didn't have Chris Godwin didn't have the touchdowns. Chris Godwin had the usage, but he just did not have the numbers to really be a top fantasy guy. Thomas goes and steps into that Evans role, assuming it's Baker Mayfield. I don't know. I dig it. Again, I just don't want to give Giants fans the satisfaction of telling them that they might get Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm at, and that's why partially
he's just going to go undrafted in this.
It's partially why I didn't give Neighbors to the Giants to begin with. Not because I didn't want to give Giants fans the satisfaction, but Pat, how am I going to sit here and call it an ideal fantasy fit when he's got Daniel fucking Jones throwing?
Well, exactly. That's why I don't want to pick him. If we were just saying
he's alone, but
if we were just saying like a top assign these top skill position players a new home, then yeah, we'd probably put him on the Giants. But we're talking good fantasy fits here.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Yeah. You've thrown a wrench into where my wide receivers were going to go because I had Brian Thomas Jr. actually to the Buffalo Bills to kind of replace Gabe Davis and potentially not replace, but eat into the workload of Stephon Diggs if he continues to slide a little bit in terms of his skill level. Now you've got me thinking, you've got me adjusting. I still could take any of these quarterbacks and put them where I want them to be. Or I could do what I really want to do, and I'm going to do it, and it's a move we've talked about a little bit, not even a little bit, a good amount. I'm going to jump into the running back realm.
Do it.
And I'm going to also put Blake Corum on the Los Angeles
What are you just doing a Chargers mock draft over here?
Charger fans, you're welcome because I imagine most Charger fans would be pretty excited about these moves. Just to summarize it, because we've explained this so many times, but Greg Roman likes to run. Greg Roman does not like to throw to his running backs, which in theory is a negative for Corum, but with Corum not having that skill set in his bag, as we know, it's at least not a major strength of his, this is a scheme that would fit him pretty well. It's a team that, for a guy who's likely to be selected not in the first round, this is as high of a workload situation as he's going to find, and I want to see Blake Corum in a situation like that. So I think that is the best bet for a running back in this pretty weak running back class to become fantasy relevant, and this is a guy that I would be pretty excited to draft if he ended up on the Chargers, even with their line questions.
I was thinking I was probably going to do that just because I couldn't really think of anything, but so what am I going to do that I can't think of anything? Let's just say it. The number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, to the Bears. I mean, with Tufts graduate Shane Waldron now at the helm of that offense, this whole team is going for broke here with Caleb Williams. Like Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, their seat isn't hot. Like they are on fire right now. Like their asses are on fire. They need this to work. And obviously, we saw DJ Moore be an incredibly effective fantasy piece there. And the running game is a bit questionable, but you get more of a pure passer like Williams as opposed to a guy like Justin Fields, who, like you said, The regime there did not know what to do with him. So obviously this guy is going number 1 overall for a reason. I certainly like him more than I liked Bryce Young, like when we were talking about him going number 1 overall. Also didn't care for CJ Stroud either, so maybe, who knows, but yeah, I think that he's the best player in the draft who's going to go here, and they're going to move on from Justin Fields for a reason.
Okay. I'm going to stop the Malik Neighbors slide. I don't think we should let him go undrafted just because we don't know what to do with him, but I am going to get creative. Originally, I had Roma Dunze to the Bears at number 9. Malik Neighbors is not going to fall at number 9, but when you have the number 9 pick, you certainly have the versatility and leverage to go up 3-4 spots if you trade some future picks. I'm going to send Malik Neighbors to the Bears because
that would be electric.
I do think the Bears are. Yeah, again, I think they would draft a Dunze if he was there at 9. You've removed that possibility from me. So I think the Bears are going to want another receiver to pair with Caleb. If they are going for broke with Caleb Williams, I don't think they're going to go for broke with Darnell Mooney as the wide receiver 2. DJ Moore's a great weapon to have around. Cole Kmet's a great weapon to have around. It's not enough when you're trying to develop a quarterback correctly for the first time in your fucking franchise's history. So I'm going to say Malik Neighbors. I don't know how they would do it, but it's only a couple picks. It wouldn't, completely break their bank to move up from 9 to, say, 6 or 5 to get this done. So I'm going to say Malik Neighbors to the Chicago Bears.
All right. That'd be hot.
And I mean, that's a great fantasy fit for Neighbors as well, because he's playing alongside DJ Moore on a team that is going to let Caleb Williams sling the rock, yeah. Because that's kind of Shane Waldron's MO. We talked when we were talking about the coordinators about how the Seahawks didn't run the ball with Waldron as much as you thought they might because of having, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, and just the identity of the Seahawks in general was that they're a run-first team, but they haven't been that. They threw the ball more than 60% of the time. If they're going to do that with Caleb, who's got a big arm, Neighbors can certainly shine alongside DJ Moore, who's going to take quite a bit of coverage to his side of the field.
Okay. I am going here. Kind of going a couple obvious ones. I've got one, but I think it's just going to be ridiculous, so I don't think I'm going to do it. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Put Penix somewhere. Take Michael Penix.
Was not going to quarterback it. If I were to go Michael Penix, I probably would say the Vikings, hypothetically speaking.
That's fair. Keep him in purple. He looks good in purple.
You talked about Blake Corum. I do not think Blake Corum is going to be the top running back off. I think that's going to be Jonathan Brooks from Texas. And I think the first team that is going to use a pick. Oh, that's tough. That's tough to say that just because this team has so many other needs.
The Patriots. I'm kidding. Running back's like the only thing we don't need.
Shit.
Pat is deep in thought trying to figure out which team doesn't fucking hate running backs because they kind of all
like
do.
The thought in my head was like the Panthers, but that's not ideal for anyone. That's not what we're doing. I might have to just cop out and go back to wide receivers because there's so many of them. Oh god, my fun one was like Jermaine Burton to the Chiefs, but I feel like
don't do that.
But I feel like he's just the next coming of Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. I feel like he fits right in there with Oh man, I am really just cooked right now.
Nature of this type of draft will make it hard on each other. I think it's great.
Yeah. Damn.
Give someone to the Patriots. We're an ideal landing spot. I know we are.
Okay. Drake May.
Fuck.
Enjoy him.
Okay.
But genuinely, like I was saying, I do think that Jaden Daniels is going to be the number 2 pick, whether it is Washington or a team that trades up for him. So, conventional wisdom there, that would be Drake May to the Patriots, who might be the biggest wild card of this upcoming season, just because we are so used to what to expect from the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. And it's totally different.
And could be totally different. You can't say like, oh, Drake May wouldn't work in it's not Bill Belichick's. It's Alex Van Pelt's offense now. So again, not the fact that Jaden Daniels is going second doesn't necessarily mean I believe he's better than Drake May, but I just think that's how it's going to shake out. And honestly, Brandon, I would be happy if I was you and Patriots drafted Drake May at 3.
I would be, yeah. And look, I don't think you're too off base there. You know, with Drake May, I think I'm talking out both sides of my mouth here because this is the reason I didn't give Jaden Daniels to the Patriots. But I do think it's a safe bet that the Patriots are going to go out and spend this money on some skill players. Like, do I really think Mike Evans is going to leave Tampa? Not necessarily, but there are some moves and some signings the Patriots could make that, look, I wouldn't be upset if the Patriots were the team that traded for T. Higgins. Like, I think the Patriots have so much money that they are going to surround Drake May with at least relatively competent weapons and allow them to run
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Shut the fuck up. Run that Alex Van Pelt offense that we saw Joe Flacco shine in for part of the year. Like, Drake May projects to be, you know, an athletic Joe Flacco. Like, he's going to sling the rock. He's got a strong arm. I'm excited to see how he actually translates to the NFL. But
just
yeah,
unfair
there's potential.
Comparisons to Mitchell Trubisky. Just because they went to North Carolina.
Oh my God. There's
And people were like, oh, Mitchell Trubisky and Daniel Jones. So what? They came from the ACC. Like, that does not make Drake May the next in line to do that.
There is a phrase out there for people that do that. Don't scout the helmet. Stop scouting the helmet.
Yep.
Like, it makes no fucking... There's no correlation. Like, I understand, yes, quarterbacks are less likely to come from a school like North Carolina than they are, you know, an SEC school. But if they've made it this far and they are already on the radar, like, they've already bucked the trend. The fact that he went to North Carolina does not mean he's going to flame out. Like, people said this about Ohio State for the longest time.
He only went there because his doofy brother was good at basketball there. Like, let's be honest.
Luke May. I always forget they're related. Oh, my God.
Because, you know, the first time I've heard of Drake May, I'm like, oh, maybe it's Luke May's brother, and then it actually was. I'm like, what the hell?
I always forget. But, yeah, like, people love to say that about Ohio State. It's truthfully what it is it's people who don't dig into this stuff at all. I mean, look, you and I aren't grinding film like that, but it's people that don't dig into this stuff at all who are just desperately trying to find a correlation so that they can have a take on something and sound smart. That's really all it is. For you to say the most basic bitch thing ever, that, oh, you went to North Carolina. I know other North Carolina quarterbacks that didn't do well. Buddy, not how it works. Like, I wish C.J. Stroud could have just stabbed that take in the neck and put it to bed for good with his success coming out of Ohio State now, but clearly it's still a little bit of a thing. All right. With my final pick, I am also going to go away from the receivers and such, and I'm going to finish off our quarterbacks, Pat. I'm going to put J.J. McCarthy on the Falcons. I think for J.J. McCarthy to have fantasy relevance, it will be because he is surrounded by a bunch of great weapons. And that's what the Falcons are. We've talked up those guys. Look, the Falcons, Pat, until the Falcons fill their fucking quarterback spot, I'm going to continue to talk about them as the ideal quarterback landing spot. So this is just a new way, a new context for me to do that. And sitting at 8 feels like kind of the spot that McCarthy's trending toward going. And that is maybe an overpay, but that is a realistic spot based on some of the news we've been hearing if he doesn't go even higher than that. So I think at 8, the Falcons could get McCarthy, and he's the kind of guy that can just distribute the ball to Pitts, London, Bijan, and be able to put up some good fantasy numbers even if he's not a spectacular sort of player himself.
Yeah, I have but I'm starting to view McCarthy a little bit more favorably. I just think some of these takes are ridiculous on him, but like if the Raiders wound up with him, I wouldn't hate it. I would not hate it. He seems a bit safer than a guy like Penix, who obviously has just arguably some of the most injury concerns we've seen out of a top quarterback prospect in a while. So,
yeah. McCarthy's the kind of guy that I'm coming around to in the sense that if we were to trade down and end up with McCarthy and then future picks, I'd be maybe okay with that. Because, look, I don't think Jaden Daniels and Drake May are like these can't-miss prospects, and obviously neither is J.J. McCarthy. And with the Patriots having so many needs to fill, I'm okay with stacking assets if that's the right move given the offer. I need to come away with a quarterback in the first round. That's all. Wherever it is, that's what I need to feel good about where the Patriots are heading here in the future. So that will do it for our ideal fits draft. Just to recap, Pat's got Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals, Rome Odunze to the Titans, Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bucks, Caleb Williams to the Bears, and Drake May to the Patriots. I've got Brock Bowers to the Chargers, Jaden Daniels to the Broncos, Blake Corum to the Chargers, Malik Neighbors to the Bears, and J.J. McCarthy to the Falcons. So I think if any or all of those moves happened, I think you could find all of those players on plenty of fantasy rosters at some point throughout the year. Sadly, as we know, some of these guys will go to far less than ideal situations for their fantasy output. We just hope more of them than not actually go somewhere that will, enhance their skill set and potential fantasy point total. So there you go. There's our draft. Pat, we'll move on. We'll touch on some other sports real quick before we get to... I feel
strongly about this next topic. So
I do as well. So look,
I think we're on the opposite side of the take here.
I'm ready to fight. Okay, so guys, you will remember last year we talked about March Madness quite a bit, and I'm kind of trying to find ways to microdose March Madness to you guys before we truly get into the tourney, because we will probably spend half of those shows talking about March Madness. Coming from Connecticut, we're UConn guys. We are passionate about our team, and truthfully, don't kid yourself. March Madness is the best sporting event of the year. It's the best time of the year.
Even if you don't love college basketball,
Yeah, like even though we're a football podcast primarily, this is one time, I know I say it all the time, we're going to touch on other sports, and we mostly end up not doing that, but this is one time a year where we will definitely hit on another sport, that being March Madness at the very least. So, Pat, college basketball rankings, we've got a new number one. We've got Houston at number one, Purdue at number 2, and UConn at number 3. UConn, our squad, was a unanimous number 1 for several weeks. What is your take that you think I'm on the opposite end of? I'm curious to hear it.
Well, I'll get to that, but I will say first, UConn is better than Purdue.
I mean,
Houston being number 1, Houston won 2 ranked games. As I was looking at Houston for reasons that are now legal in the state of Connecticut. And, they won 2 impressive games last week. So, they deserve that. If they could get another 2 or 3 points right now in this game they're at right now, would be terrific for educational purposes. But, But yeah, over Purdue is just I get they lost and Purdue did not, even though Purdue beat a bunch of lukewarm teams. But again, the rankings mean nothing. Those mean nothing. It's just a bunch of bloviating journalists who watch one team and other teams that play that team. So,
yeah,
whatever. But I would argue that the bigger story has been, in light of Duke's loss to Wake Forest, court storming as Kyle Filipowski banged his knees and got a little boo-boo. Turns out he's fine. That has raised the question of, should court storming be banned? How do you do it? And there have been takes all over the spectrum here. And I think the most notable one is your close and personal friend, Jay Billis, who said that
he was out of pocket.
Once they storm the court, they are on the court, and that they should be cited or arrested, and that would stop court storming. Mm-hmm. You want to throw college students in jail for celebrating a big win.
Yes.
Come on. Yes, but that is an insane take for me. Insane. I mean, Kyle Filipowski, first of all, the dude is moping. You know what's coming. Get the fuck off the court. Mm. I will say, if you can somehow, as security, hold them back for 20 seconds so everyone can safely exit the court, then let them go nuts. Do it. I don't know how you can do that. Especially some of these schools, typically when they storm the court, maybe a smaller school. So, they don't have, that kind of security presence. But if you can figure out how to do it. I understand their safety's sake, but, some of these takes on the other side of it are absolutely ridiculous. And you know what, Duke? Jay Billis, your precious Dukies, win the fucking game.
Yeah.
You know how the court storm, how Kyle Filipowski wouldn't have gotten a boo-boo? If Duke won the game. So let these kids have fun. I understand it's in the name of safety, and if, like I said, get them the hell off the court as fast as possible. You know, we don't want, you know, if God forbid Kyle Filipowski actually was seriously injured, that would have been terrible. That would have truly been terrible. So I understand why we're having this discussion, but like, I let these people, you know, have fun here. And oh god, I had something else to say, and now I forgot it. God, you go ahead and give your old man yelling at cloud take on this.
So here's the thing: I am not in favor of banning court storming. I think there needs to be a way to make it safer, because I do think it's a problem now that we've seen this happen twice this year and not really ever before this, of players actually being in danger. We saw Caitlin Clark get sort of tackled when Iowa got upset earlier in the year on the women's side, and then now Kyle Filipowski getting, you know, caught up in the middle of things. My issue comes down more to the frequency with which I'm seeing court storming, and
that's fair.
We need to fucking relax. Pat, Wake Forest was favored in this game. I understand not everyone is looking at Vegas lines. Not everyone's looking at Vegas lines, and so people don't understand that. All they see is we're playing number 8 Duke. Everyone hates Duke. We're going to storm the court. I get it. But, like, that the Vegas line thing, it puts into perspective that Wake Forest is a good team. Like, you were not a massive underdog in this game. You weren't an underdog at all, but even if you were, you wouldn't have been a massive underdog. And this just furthered my opinion that I had from the week prior, from a couple days prior, when Creighton stormed the court after beating UConn. I get it. We're number 1 in the country, and you know, you beat us by a good amount. Pat, UConn has not won in Omaha in their history. We're like 0-4. Creighton is number 15 in the country. Yeah. I just think court storming needs to be saved for true, genuine, massive upsets. Not these games that are expected to be like 2 or 3 point results whichever way you go. It's just goofy to me. Like, court storming should be for when unranked Akron somehow pulls off a fucking upset against Kansas, who's coming to Akron for whatever reason for a game. Yeah. I don't know why that's happening, but like, that's what it should be reserved for. I almost see, once conference play starts, I almost see no excuse for court storming unless it's the literal worst team in your conference. In UConn's sake, it would be DePaul. Yeah, DePaul, go ahead and storm the court if you beat us at home. You're fucking awful. You literally have not won a conference game this year. I get it. But, like, these teams, conference play is a shit show by nature. Like,
yeah, it's hard to win chaos on the road in conference play.
It's so hard to win on the road. Like, I think it's bad, and it's creating, you know, now an unsafe sort of situation. Like, I don't know how you litigate, you know, when you can allow fans to storm and not storm. But to me, and I wrote this little, like, just like quip in our show sheet of, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. I think just the, like, kind of the culture of court storming over the years has been, fans now are looking for any excuse. Yeah. So even if it's a slight upset, you did something slightly unexpected, they're like, oh, this is our excuse to get on the court. Everyone fucking go. Like, it's the only time we're ever going to get to do this. True, I guess, but like, it's not an appropriate reaction for what you've accomplished. Be excited. Be fucking psyched. Go out and party. Stay off the court unless it's a crazy upset.
Except that one guy that stormed the court when Detroit Mercy got their first win of the year against IUPUI.
I did not see
one
that. That's very
one
funny.
Individual stormed the court for that. That is fantastic. That was fantastic.
I did not see that, but that's very funny. And then our last sort of other sport note, just to touch on it, baseball, spring training is in full swing. I'm officially getting a little psyched for baseball because, oh my God, there's a thumb that just popped
up. What the hell?
Damn, StreamYard.
Is that?
StreamYard be reactive? It's not doing it for me.
Oh my God. Look at it. What the fuck?
How do you have fireworks? Wait, where's mine? Why don't I get this treatment? This is fucked up. This is prejudice. All right, for anybody that's just listening.
What else can I do?
Apparently, StreamYard has
what if I dab?
Come up if you just make like hand motions, and Pat just got fireworks behind him, so we were very confused, as well as a little bubble with a thumbs up. Okay. Anyway, yeah, excited because I'm watching Juan Soto hit bombs, and as a Yankee fan, that's very exciting. I hope we can re-sign him.
Spencer Jones, dude.
Spencer Jones, lefty Aaron Judge from Vanderbilt is killing it as well. So yeah, baseball season's coming. We might touch on that a little bit. Just wanted to let you guys know if you're not following baseball that spring training's here, and that's also why we talked about the cock and balls being shown in the Fanatics baseball pants. Okay, finishing out with some viewer questions here.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
Okay, only got a couple minutes here, but Pat, if you had to pick one player to build your team around, who would it be? Can't be Mahomes. This question from Tyson Wilson.
I think the answer right now has to be C.J. Stroud, does it not? Like, not only is he completely, the first names that pop in my head, honestly, the first name that popped in my head was like Josh Allen, just because of the age compared to a guy like Lamar Jackson. Well, I don't even know. They might be this. I don't know. God, we don't have enough time for me to not.
They were the same class, so they can't be far.
We don't know. We don't know. We don't have enough time for me to not know how old these people are. Yeah, they're the same fucking age, Patrick. So yeah, Josh Allen and Lamar were the first names that popped into my head. But I just think Stroud playing as well as he did, right off the bat, on a team that was supposed to be terrible, I feel like that has to be the answer.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you pick any player other than a quarterback in this question, you're overthinking it because quarterback is the most important position on the field. I just think there are some people out there that would try to think of, who's the best O-lineman because O-line is so important. And that's true, but you got to build the rest of the O-line. And then if you're picking anything like a receiver or a running back, you just like fantasy football a little too much. Yeah, I think C.J. Stroud's probably the answer here. I would agree with you. Let's see, Pat. We'll do one more question because we are running out of time. All right, we'll finish with this last one. What's one player you see really increasing their stock because of the combine? This question from Tactical Mech. I put Rome Odunze because he is the top receiver who's actually participating, and I feel like this could kind of cement him from look, he's been mocked anywhere from like the teens to, like number 6 or 7 overall. So I think the combine, if he tests really well, it could potentially cement him as a guy who is going to go, definitely in sort of the single digit top 10 range. So I would say him just because Harrison and Neighbors are not participating.
Yeah, I'll go with I talked about Jonathan Brooks earlier. I mean, I just think that he could really cement himself as the top running back here off board, assuming he's participating. I mean, obviously that wouldn't be in the headlines, but like why wouldn't a guy like him at that point? Why wouldn't John? And he also spells Jonathan weird, right? Yeah, John Athon. Unless that's normal. Sorry, John Athons.
So he is.
He's hurt.
Yeah, so he's hurt. I knew he was hurt. I didn't know how bad he was hurt, so I was curious about his recovery. So yeah, he probably will not be participating athletically. But yeah, look, to your point though, with Brooks, I think with any running back, there's an opportunity for running backs because of just how not highly regarded the class is. Maybe somebody can emerge and cement themselves as no, I should be a back end round 1 pick or a very early round 2 pick. Yeah. I think that opportunity is there, just not for Brooks because he's still in the hospital.
And we talked about all the teams' needs. A lot of teams need running backs here, and if they want to go with a cheaper, younger option, obviously, over a guy who's 27, 28 years old.
Yeah, I would.
Which is old now, apparently.
That's very old. You're basically in the dirt. Okay, that'll do it for this episode of Off the Bench, guys. We will be back next week reacting to whatever the fuck happened in the combine and any potential trades or further releases or franchise tags. I think they're going to start coming. They're going to start coming hot and heavy here. Maybe not this week or maybe just the week after, but they're coming. They're coming everywhere.
Hot and heavy.
We will react when they come. I'm gonna come.
Damn it! No way.
I'm gonna continue to come. Skip's been coming. He's gonna continue to come. I've been coming. I'm gonna continue to come.
Oh, it's
Skip's
looping.
been coming.
It's looping.
He's
How
gonna
long do I let it loop?
I've been coming.
What is going on,
Skip's
StreamYard?
I'm just
Skip's been coming. He's
Oh
gonna
no,
continue
Stream
to
Daddy.
come.
All right,
I've been coming.
that'll do it.
I know. Roll. Oh, I thought you were gonna roll it on
3
the way out.
hours. I'm just gonna let. Oh yeah, okay, I will. All right, let's.
I've been coming. I'm gonna
For
continue
Pat
to come.
Gustafson,
Skip's
I'm
been
Brandon
coming.
Carney, and
He's
we'll
gonna
see you
continue to
guys
come.
next
I've
week.
been coming. I'm gonna
MLB
continue to
players